crossing too many boundaries. I write a novel which deals with physics and sex, or a historical novel which is set partly in the past and partly in the future, or I write a book that looks like a ghost story and turns out to be a detective story, or I keep mixing the forms. Nobody knows in one of my books whether they're reading a thriller or a comedy or a philosophical treatise. I do that deliberately because I feel life doesn't have boundaries. You don't know from one day to the next whether you're living in a soap opera or an occult thriller or a science fiction novel or a detective story. The first time I crossed the border is when I gave up the Catholic Church and became an atheist. I was about 14 at the time, and it was cataclysmic. I found I couldn't stand it out there in the vast abyss of uncertainty, so I crossed another border and became a Trotskyist. And then I had a new church, a new hierarchy, a new infallible authority, the Central Committee instead of the Pope, but it was the same thing, and it was comfortable for about a year. And then I decided being a Trotskyist wasn't all that much fun, and really the Pope was funnier than Trotsky, and I might as well have stayed a Catholic. So I crossed another border and became an agnostic. I've been crossing borders ever since. I don't think I saw a globe until I was about 10 years old or so. Before that, all I saw were flat Mercator projections where Greenland is bigger than Australia, and you've got all those distortions. When I first saw a globe, it was like a Satori experience. It was a great enlightenment for me to realize I was living on a ball. And that experience has been vastly reinforced in the last 6 years in which I've been doing a lot of flying. The more I fly, the more I realize I'm living on a great big ball in outer space. Spaceship Earth, as Bucky Fuller said. We're 2/3 of the way from the center of the galaxy. We're out in the boondocks, and we're floating out here all alone with no company at all. We're just beginning to learn to talk to the chimpanzees and gorillas, and we're working on learning to talk to the dolphins. But basically, we got to figure it all out on our own on this little speck of dust in a vast cosmos. Borders are basic mammalian territorial imperatives. All mammals want a territory, and they claim it by making excretions that make a topological outline. That's the territory they claim. That's why your dog pees on every tree when you take him for a walk. That's the way the dog is marking his territory. Chimpanzees mark their territories with excretions too. The difference between human beings or domesticated primates and the other mammals is we mark our territories with ink excretions on paper, land titles, peace treaties, and so on. Every national border in the world marks a place where two gangs of domesticated primates fought until they were exhausted and then made a territorial mark. That's how national borders are created. We don't throw excretions at each other like the chimpanzees. We throw chemicals and bombs and so on, but it's basically the same mammalian process. The only intelligent way to discuss politics is on all fours. The universe opens to infinity in all directions. As Blake said, you can see infinity in a grain of sand. Nietzsche said there are abysses everywhere once you start really looking. But because of our mammalian habits of breaking things down into territories, we all create our own reality tunnel. Instead of seeing the infinity all around us, if we're born in Dublin, Ireland, we see an Irish Catholic reality tunnel for our whole lives. If we're born in Moscow, we see a Marxist reality tunnel all our lives. If we're born in Iran, we see an Islamic fundamentalist reality tunnel. If we're born in Arkansas, we see a Christian fundamentalist reality tunnel. If we're born in England and graduate from Cambridge, we see a Cambridge agnostic reality tunnel. Getting outside reality tunnels and perceiving the non-verbal, non-symbolic, infinite flux of which we are part is very, very difficult for domesticated primates. I think it's worth trying, however. The real world is much more exciting and wiggly and alive than all of our stereotyped little reality tunnels put together. The whole educational system is based on creating borders. The arts department is in perpetual warfare against the science department. And the physicists are at war with the chemists as to who's going to get more funding. And they're continually creating artificial separations in the universe so that their specialty can get more money. Right now, the physicists are winning because they serve mammalian imperatives better than, say, the art department does. Most of the physicists in the United States today are engaged in research on one central project, which is how to deliver more and more explosive power over longer and longer distances in shorter and shorter times to kill more and more people. And this is what the United States government and the United States people apparently thinks is the most worthwhile project in the world. So the physicists get most of the money. And so they're very intent on keeping up the demarcation between physics and the lesser sciences, which don't kill as many people so fast, or the arts department, which doesn't kill anybody, hardly. And eventually they'll have enough money that they can deliver infinite explosive power over infinite distances to kill infinite numbers of human beings. And then we will have achieved the goal of the last 50 years or so of American political thinking. The first time I had a real sense of crossing a border was when I saw King Kong, which I found the most exciting movie of my life up until that age. And when the movie ended with Carl Denham saying, "It wasn't the airplanes, it was beauty killed the beast," I crossed the border. I suddenly realized something had happened. This wasn't an ordinary movie. There were meanings there I couldn't understand. I suddenly discovered there was such a thing as allegory and parable and symbolism, things nobody had ever told me about. King Kong was my introduction to serious art. As I became older, I realized more and more that borders are fictions. The universe appears to be a seamless unity. There doesn't seem to be any borders, any real demarcations in the universe. We put borders in because we're mammals and we like to mark territories. But the universe itself functions holistically. You can make a territorial mark on a map and say this belongs to us and this belongs to the bad people over there. The people on the other side of the border are always considered the bad people. That's part of primate psychology. But that doesn't change the fact that it's still one planet, and if we're polluting our air here, it's going over the border to pollute those people too. And if they're polluting the rivers over there, the rivers are flowing across the border to us and we're getting polluted drinking water. The modern education, G.K. Chesterton said, consists of studying more and more about less and less until we know nearly everything about absolutely nothing. And somebody who knows physics and doesn't understand politics is a barbarian. That's the kind of person who'll go to work for the government and build bombs without thinking about the moral implication of what they're doing. And somebody who only knows the history of art from the Impressionists to abstract expressionism or pop art or something like that and doesn't understand the second law of thermodynamics, they're barbarians too. They have no concept of the reality that's going on around them and outside them and of which they are part. As long as there are rule makers, there are people who just for the hell of it will be looking for ways to break the rules. You can see that very clearly in computers. There's this vast underground culture of crackers, as they're called, who just for kicks, and very few of them are making any profit out of it, just for kicks, they find ways to break into allegedly secure systems. Captain Crunch, he found how to break into the phone lines of the White House, the CIA, and the FBI, all of which were allegedly surrounded by so many safeguards that nobody could get in. Well, Crunch got in just to prove it could be done.
Well, I can teach the computer to listen for dial tone or a data tone or somebody picking up the phone.
What have you learned from that, from scanning?
Well, scanning finds, this was how remob is found. The remote observation is found by scanning. There's a silver box number that the phone company installs to tap people's lines. So what they do, they set up a special private number that you call it up into, and this number will tap a line. And that's what I use the computer for, to find that number, to verify that the phone company does indeed have these numbers. People are not aware of the fact that these things exist. And it's kind of a bummer to have your privacy invaded all the time by these people who can come in and just sit and monitor your own private calls just because they either think you're ripping them off or they think you're involved in some illegal activity. And they'll monitor anybody. They'll monitor their own employees. They'll monitor people who don't even work for the phone company, that work regular jobs, just because they think these people are, who knows why.
My idea of reality has changed every decade in my life because I've studied new subjects and because science keeps bringing in new data that changes our concept of reality. There's a large school of thought in all the sciences these days that say we need a new paradigm, a completely new definition of reality. I seem to be the lone dissenting voice crying in the wilderness saying the new paradigm will be as much a case of self-hypnosis as the old paradigm, and let's not kid ourselves. I think what we need is not a new paradigm, but no paradigm at all. Instead of a new model of reality, we should recognize the relativity of all models of reality and understand that no model is reality. The map is never the territory. The menu is not the meal. You can't eat the menu. You can't live on a map of New York. Our mental concepts are not the universe, and trying to form a new paradigm may be necessary at this point in history scientifically, but the new paradigm will contain as many holes as the old paradigm. I think true scientific and philosophical sophistication is identical with mysticism in recognizing that no model will ever do, and that we should use a variety of models at different times depending on where we are in space-time and who we're dealing with and what problems we're trying to solve. There is no one model that will solve all of our problems. Or if there is, I haven't found it yet.